Dean, I know Dean's done this before, but it could just be a refresher for you. But all right, so this is going to be a part one of like a two-part series. So this is a little bit more like it's about aerobic conditioning, but there's so many different topics we could delve into. We could go aerobic conditioning for athletes, which is a little bit more of what today is probably about. There is some application to like clinical pop, but that's what part two is going to be a little bit more of, is like designing aerobic conditioning programs for a typical clinical pop that we would see, other than just getting them on the treadmill for 15 minutes at the end of the session. So that'll be more part two. Today's a little bit more athletic population or general population who have an interest in their fitness. Yeah, so that's what more today's about. Cool. So why is conditioning assessment important? What do you guys reckon?
Why is conditioning assessment important?
Why is looking at someone's aerobic
aerobic health can be a precursor for a lot of health conditions, but it's also important to understand what their baseline is if they're wanting to improve that area.
Looking from a sport and athlete, I guess demands of different positions have different like requirements, like they've got to meet in terms of like AFL, like half forward positions different to midfield or wing.
100%.
Different running capacity required, so it's good to know what actually the capacity is.
Yep.
And versus what they actually need to be able to do on a game. And actually assess like heat efforts, like one of them.
Yeah. So you've gone more with the hat of health. Dean's gone with the hat of performance. So, and that's right. There's two of them together. Two reasons why they're important. One for health benefits, like not dying from a heart attack, and then other benefit is from a performance point of view, to give people the edge to perform at a high level. So that's why it's important. So what are some ways, and there's more than this. This is just some things that I brainstormed of methods that are available. So some of the methods available to us to prescribe at the moment. So, and this is a little bit more focused on running, but we've got continuous or steady state training. We've got interval training, which could be like broken into short, medium, and long. And I've put a little table on the slide to just define what a short interval is, what a medium interval is, what a long interval is. And again, think about the different requirements of someone's sport or what you're trying to do with them. You give them a different type of interval. High intensity interval training, or that repeat effort stuff that Dino mentioned, could be more that anaerobic, part aerobic. We've got fartlek, MAS, continuous. What did I say? Continuous. I already said that at the top. MAS specific, RPE based conditioning, rating of perceived exertion based conditioning. We've got prescription of wattage or power, and we've also got heart rate zones. So there's like, and there's probably, I don't know, is there more? Can you guys think of different other types of methods? There probably is some others.
What about the one that you talked about, you got me to do with my program, low intensity? Oh wait, no, that was low intensity steady state.
Yep. So it's a type of steady state, that one. Yeah, it'll fall into that continuous, longer duration style. Yep, Liz. We talk about that a little bit here. But yeah, there could be some other ones.
Can you remind me what fartlek is again?
Perfect.
It's short and fast, isn't it?
Fartlek is
short and then long combined.
Fartlek is actually, I'll have to find the exact definition for it.
There's two different types, isn't there?
Of fartlek?
Yeah, like there's run, jog, like that
Yeah.
method, and there's also like run 100, rest 200, rest 300. Rest,
That's right.
400 rest. There's a couple of
That
there's a couple of different ways.
Yeah. So what you
time versus
distance, correct? That's right. So you can prescribe so to find the exact prescription of fartlek, we'll find out at the end.
It's more just interval.
It's mixture.
Okay.
It's mixture. It is interval. I'll actually show you a fartlek. I'll show you right now, actually, just quickly, Charles, just so you know. I've got a track on Google Drive called 8-minute fartlek. Okay, so I film this. I send it sometimes to clients.
Jog.
So clients can just, it's on SoundCloud too. So they just go on SoundCloud and I say, listen to the 8-minute. Hang on. So they're jogging, and they're waiting for the instruction.
Fast run.
Fast run. They keep running fast.
Really clever.
Jog.
And they go back to a jog. So it's a mixture of different things. This was actually, this is a AFL specific one. We had an S&C coach at Greenvale who did like a project on looking at the different type of efforts a player does in a quarter, and like counting how many times that player goes from a walk to a jog, from a jog to a run to a fast run to a sprint. And he worked out the averages, and then we've just built it into a track that goes for 8 minutes.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. There's also like a 4-minute track. So yeah, fartlek is, we'll talk a little bit about it today, but fartlek is actually a really good, it's almost something I would get someone to do early days before getting them to do high intensity sprints or runs. If they can't get through fartlek, they shouldn't probably do the sprints. Okay, so next questions are, we need to choose the right test for the context of our client. Okay, so like Dean said, are they an athlete? Like you said, maybe they could be clinical pop. So is doing a beep test suitable for a client like that we see? Maybe not, right? But there might be another type of clinical aerobic test that might be better, such as a 3-minute step test or a 6-minute walk test. So we need to first pick the right test for the context of the client. What are the pros and cons of each available method? So we need to think about that as well. We'll go through the different types of tests. What are you trying to find out by completing this assessment, and why is it important for you and the person? Are we just doing a test for the sake of doing a test, or are we doing it to see what their baseline is, to compare against themselves? Are we we need to figure out why are we actually doing it? We're going to get an athlete to do something or a person to go through a sub-maximal or maximal test. It requires a lot of exertion, right? There has to be a purpose to why you're trying to do it. If you don't know the purpose, don't do it. There's no point, literally no point. And then the last bit is, what instrument will you use? So are you going to be doing this outdoor, treadmill, bike, a watt bike, a spin bike, a rower, assault bike? Like, what do you have available to use and what's practical? So some aerobic tests that have a bit of, the first couple have quite a bit of research on them, and then the rest of them is a little bit more of just, I'll go through it anyway. So running test. If someone is appropriate to run and you want to look at their baseline and see where they're at, female, there's a lot of research that shows 1.2 kilometre is the perfect distance. And I'll explain in a moment why 1.2. For male, 1.6 is also acceptable. And again, it depends on what you're trying to find out. These are good distances if you're trying to find out maximal aerobic speed. So what the research has found with mass, the test has to go for a minimum of 5 minutes, and it shouldn't be longer than 8. So if I put, instead of, say for female, if I put 600 meter run, they're going to do that in less than 5 minutes. That's not really assessing someone's maximal aerobic speed. That's more looking at their anaerobic, and it's more of a sprint. And again, if it goes more than 8 minutes, it's too long. So that's what they've found. So, but then you got to think about, right? Like an AFL player can run 2Ks in 6 minutes 30. So that might be a more appropriate test for a AFL players to not go 1.6, but to go to a 2.
Yep.
Okay, so it has to be within that range, 5 to 8 minutes.
So maybe your athletic population, but not elite athletic population, would use those tests.
And what you could either do is take the distance out, and you could just say, look, for 6 minutes, you're going to run as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And just however far they get on the GPS on the watch, that's their distance. you could also do it that way as well, rather than having a known distance is good for when you're working with a big group of people, because you're not going to get 30 athletes to all run their own distances and have their own watches.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
So
kind of, like, I was gonna say it's a bit tricky with like some like his junior sports, because that's obviously gonna be like hard, because like
100%.
1.6k, like particularly for someone like it's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
They won't do it.
They're not gonna be able to do it because of lung, like it's developmental wise, they're not actually gonna be able to do something like that. So
100%.
it sort of makes it tricky than testing something like that. Because like I had to, like when I tested like Daniel Cooper, like I made him do like a 1k time trial that was like just over like 5 minutes. That was like 5.5 minutes. For, like,
Okay,
1K.
so it still was in the zone.
Still was in the zone, but it's like, you
But,
know, you
yeah.
can't really push him any beyond that to like distance wise, because he would be like way outside timeline.
Yeah, and an actual physical ability to run more than that. So yeah, and that's where you just got to use clinical judgment as to like what is the right distance or time to give to our client. Beep test actually has quite a bit of good backing behind it. They also do another version of the beep test called the Montreal beep test.
I do the yo-yo test now.
Yo-yo test is another one. Beep test is one. There is a good chart I've put on there too, where depending on whatever level they finish on the beep test, it automatically converts to an MAS score. So we can find someone's MAS, meters per second, by beep test. Beep test is probably easy to do with limited space, maybe like a small to moderate amount of people in one setting. The only thing you got to take into account with beep test is the change of direction. So that actually, there's some newer types of beep tests that take into account for every time they turn, without confusing you guys.
That's like the yo-yo test, because like it's got that extra like 2 meters at the end. They stop,
Correct.
they let you go around, and then come back, and then
Yep.
it starts again.
Yeah. Yep.
Mind you, that thing's brutal. I don't recommend doing.
I haven't done a beep or yo-yo in probably 6 years. I remember in high school, whenever there was a beep test, I used to take a sickie because I used to hate. I used to get so
I
nervous.
did a yo-yo test with one mate, probably just as COVID started. That was
Yep.
like 2020.
Mm.
I found that harder than the beep test.
I've done a beep test since high
Yeah,
school.
yo-yo test is like, I'd say it's probably harder, but because you're actually effectively sprinting the whole way. Like it's not progressive. It's a little bit progressive, but it's actually more of a brutal test. Like, it
So
goes
you've
up a
got
lot
that
quicker.
active recovery at the end,
Yeah,
but
the rate goes quicker. So
Yeah,
you're having
got
to
it.
run a lot harder. Like it's 20 meters, but you're still having to run a lot harder. Like whereas a beep test, it's like
builds up
Builds up
slowly. Yeah.
slowly.
Yep. Well, they still use, weirdly enough, they still use beep tests for police force. It's like you have to get 5.0, which is just stupid. You can almost walk the first 3 levels. Anyway, the other one that you could use is your own modified ramp protocol. And you guys would have done, I hope so, in uni, some sort of ramp protocol, whether on a treadmill or a bike. Yes, no? Sort of?
We didn't do that at cardiac.
Okay. So, VO2 mask,
That's
right?
not like a YMCA, is it?
That's YMCA is technically like a ramp protocol.
Or
But
a
that's probably the
Bruce.
only one we really did at uni.
Bruce test?
Bruce test is like a type. So basically, if I had you guys with an oxygen mask, how it works is, again, let's say on a treadmill, they sort of give you a low. It's all based on watts as well. So they'll put a speed and an incline up that equivalates to be a starting of like 100 watts, and you'll walk or you'll run at 100 watts, which will be maybe say like 8 kilometers an hour and 3%, whatever it equivalates to, right? And you run for that for a minute, and then it goes from 100 watts to 150 watts for the next minute, and then it goes from 150 to 200, and then 200 to 250, right? So the speed's either increasing or the inclination, and you're basically going till you can't go anymore. And whatever you stop at, say you're at the 10-minute mark and you're up to 450 watts and you're running and you can't finish that minute, like you've just started, you're 30 seconds into 450 watts and then, oh no, I've got to stop, then 400 watts is what you finished at, right? And that is like that's like a ramp protocol. Now these bikes here actually calculate watts very easily. You don't have to, it's straight on the screen.
Yeah.
So
So do the ones in the thing.
yeah,
These ones are a bit more accurate.
yeah, these are really good. But yes, the ones in the other room do what. So you could look at doing a very basic, your own protocol of just doing an incremental wattage increase. So like every minute or 2 minutes, increasing by 25 watts or 50 watts, and starting at a certain level, and just seeing where they fail. Like what is their capacity of how much power they can sustain.
I don't think we've ever done like a proper ramp test.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I know. I don't reckon I have.
yeah.
I've done like Bruce and all those ones, but not like.
We had an anaerobic test we had to do as part of the protocol for the polycystic ovarian syndrome. They had day one where they did like fat biopsies, OGTT, then they came in, they did a VO2 max, and then there was also an anaerobic test. I really can't remember what we did. But they
Nah,
were-
this
that
is
was-
this is aerobic.
Because it might have been like.
Okay.
Oh, it's
it might have
looking
been like
aerobic.
Steve Salik's protocol or something.
I can't remember which one it was, but they were hooked up to the oxygen
Yeah.
thing.
So obviously we're not hooking up to oxygen. We're just looking at. You could keep the SpO2 on whilst doing it. You could get blood pressure if you wanted to during, but mainly just looking at what is their like power capability through the legs.
Right. Yeah, no, that wasn't it.
Again, yeah. Now something to actually be mindful of, and I remember one day I just had a client that canceled, and I just was like, whatever. I was just looking in the treadmills, right? You got to actually see what these treadmills can do in terms of like what's inbuilt into them. Like I can't remember where I was. It could even be these ones here. Some treadmills have inbuilt ramp protocols into them. These bikes have it's called an FTP, functional threshold point test. So just take note of actually the equipment that is available and the technology inbuilt into them. When you like scroll down the screen, you can see all the options. There's actually some power tests inbuilt into these things that you don't have to set up and get all the watts right and whatever. So there is some cool little things that are already inbuilt. So just take that into account as well. But yeah, graded. A ramp protocol of your own sort. You can make your own protocol up just as long as you repeat it. FTP test, which is on the bike, which is inbuilt. That is a little bit more anaerobic, but that's a cool test. You could get a client on the rower, and you could do a max time, like a time trial, that takes anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes, same as the running. Or you could just do a simple time trial of a known distance that you just want to get someone's baseline of how fast it takes them to do 1K, and then retest in 12 weeks. And then you got your more clinical tests, 3-minute step test, 6-minute, whatever. And there's 20 trillion other aerobic tests. But really, for the running, you want to get that 5 to 8 minute mark, whatever it is. Questions sort of about that? And again, Dean made a good point. Juniors, it's all modifiable, this. Yep. Cool. Okay. So mass. Do you know what mass is, Charles?
We have been through it before. Max aerobic speed.
Yeah. Yep. So it's defined as the lowest speed at which VO2 max occurs.
Okay.
It's the lowest speed, kilometers per hour or meters per second, at which that person reaches their VO2 max. That's what max is, maximal aerobic speed. Anything more than that, it tends to go into anaerobic, more anaerobic dominance. Glycolytic system tends to kick in at higher speeds.
Okay.
So yeah, we've sort of gone through that. So that's what mass is. So if you want to get someone's mass and write a running program for an athlete, I would go either to the beep test or the 1.2 or 1.6. Yep, they're my go-tos. That's quick and easy. I sometimes just get them doing it in session. You can get them doing it on a treadmill if you want. It might not be as accurate as getting them to do it just around somewhere. But I think I had a 10-year-old kid do a 1K time trial around Brimbank, around the perimeter. I was just running behind him because he wasn't running too fast, but he'd never been on a treadmill before, so it wasn't natural. So we just got him running around. So you can do it in your session. It only takes 10 minutes. It's a quick test.
Yep. Easy.
It should be 5 to 8 minutes. All right. Now, Dino, grids. Do you know what they are? Cool. Okay, so with MAS, Charles, once we've got, say you've just done a 1.2K time trial, right? And you've run that in, I don't know, give me time. Let's say 6 minutes. Does anyone have their calculator here?
So it's distance divided by time.
Yep. So this is how you work it out. Yep.
It's a K and a half. It's 1500 divided by 6 minutes. That's 500.
How far did the person run?
Okay, so let's just do, for this sake, 1200 meters. So 1200. So this is your time trial.
1200.
Write 1200 because it's a bit easier. Yep. And then put the divide under 1200. Yep. So let's say it took you 6 minutes. So what you're going to do is you've got to convert 6 minutes into seconds. So 6 times 60 seconds. Okay, 360.
6 min
3.333 meters per second.
Yep.
seconds equals 360 seconds.
Yep. And Dean worked it out. It's 3.33 meters per second. Okay.
I feel like I did this for Aiden.
You did. Yeah, so keep that screen back on, Charles, because that's actually helpful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is, and then just put in brackets next to it, that is 100%. It's 100% of your maximal aerobic speed, right? Now, grids is a type of method. Now, if you look at your PowerPoint slide, it'll probably give you a good visual, especially for you, Charles. Grids is a type of prescription that's very commonly seen in sporting places where athletes literally run in a grid, okay? But it's all based on their times. So can you see on the screen, right? So how it works is, on a grid, you have one long side and then you have one short side. I might even just draw it out as well, just because it's easier. So you'll have that's the short side,
Mm-hmm.
and then they've got the long side,
Yep.
right? So what they do is people run at 100% here. I'll explain in a moment. And then this is 70% here. So this is where
You wrote that upside down very well.
Thank you. Now, 100%, right? You need to first figure out how many seconds do you want this person to run for. Okay, so typically grids is 15 on, 15 off. So if you go 15, right, and Dean's done it now, 15 times 3.33, right, what's that equal?
So you want them to run that whole grid in 15 seconds?
No, just this one. So 15 seconds is just from this bit there, and then 15 seconds there, and then 15 seconds there, and then 15
Oh, so you
seconds
choose a time.
So it takes, correct. Depends on your goal with the athlete, what you're trying to do. So Dean's already did it. So 15 seconds times 3.3 meters per second is about 50 meters.
Right.
So it's going to be 50 meters here. I'm going to set something that is 50 meters length. Because 15 seconds times this person's maximal aerobic speed score. 15 seconds, 15 times 3.3 equals 50.
50 meters, right.
So I'm going to set up a special grid for this athlete that is going to be 50 meters long.
Right.
Okay, and that's 100%. But now, he's going to be pretty tired once he gets here. Right? He's
Yep.
going to be pretty tired. So this bit here is shorter. It's 70% of their maximal aerobic speed, right? So Dean's just done on his calculation, 3.33 times 0.7, which is 70%, times 15.
Sorry, I'm just quickly grab a tissue.
No, that's cool. Did you do this stuff with cadets a little bit? Or just
I did it cans, did it for Iron Fitness, did it for what else did I do it for? Did it for uni.
Yep. Yeah, awesome.
Oh, my ears are blocked down. Alright, so let's go over that. again. So
Yeah, cool.
this person has a running mass of.
So first thing to know is grids is a type of method. It's like it's a commonly researched thing, and what you're going to soon learn with mass is there's a thing called grids, there's a thing called Tabata, which you've heard of. Tabata,
15 off, 15 off.
20 on, 10 off. Never heard of Tabata ever.
I don't think so.
Oh my god. Okay. Tabata is like very.
I wasn't a study injury. I did cheerleading, guys.
Okay.
And rowing. We didn't do this stuff.
So there's like 4 or 5
No,
different.
like when you see the gym where you do like a 20-second plank, you have 10 seconds rest, and you go to the next one.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
That's called Tabata. It's the
Yeah.
name of a guy called Tabata. That's the name of his last
I've
name.
never heard of it.
Oh,
There
okay.
you go. Cool.
Am I still allowed to work here or?
Like interval timer. It's basically an interval.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
have just called that interval training.
Because the Tabata sounds better.
Nah, well, actually, again, without going too off topic, Tabata is actually 20 on, 10 off. 20 seconds on, 10 off. It was developed by a guy called Yoshimoto Tabata, whatever, Japanese guy, and they actually heavily researched this 20 on, 10 off model, and the amount of benefit they found from this style of training, which is basically 20 on, 10 off. So it's a 2 to 1 work to rest ratio. So yes, well, you're working harder and you get less rest, right? So, so essentially, Charles, there's like 4 or 5 different ways we can prescribe maximal aerobic speed training to someone. Grids is one method.
Yep.
So you might just do this with an athlete. Sorry, you might have to put the password in. You might just do this type of method of grids where you go to someone's sporting ground and you
Yep.
set up this grid and you do this for 2 weeks.
Right.
And
so
then
you
you
have to
scrap it.
already have their mass, and then you just fit their mass into that rule of 15 seconds
Correct.
each side. Right.
Correct.
Okay, that's where I was getting confused.
Yeah,
Got it, got it.
and what you'll see here in this, can you see here how there's actually like this guy, he's created 6 groups because there's going to be a heap of
Different
different.
masses.
That's right. So what they'll say is, say for instance your mass was 3.3 meters a second, but then there was an athlete that was so much fitter than you whose mass was like 5 meters a second, because that means they're running more meters faster. Well, they can't go in your group because it's going to be too easy for them. So what they do is, say they've got 20 athletes, you just create a rule. You might just say anyone that has a mass of 3.33 and 3.4, you go in this group.
Yep.
Then from 3.4 to 3.6, you're in the next group. 3.6 to 3.8, you're in the next grid. So essentially you've got a grid for the really fast people. So if your mass was 5 meters a second, right? At the moment you're running 50 meters here for you, right? But if your mass of 5 meters a second, 15 on will be 75 meters. 15 times 5, 15, 30.
So it's a good way to get everyone doing the same thing at the same time, but that's tailored to that.
Correct.
In there.
So that person who's a mass of 5, they're running not 50, they're running 75. They're running an extra 25 more meters.
Yeah.
But everything is on the 15 seconds.
Right.
Right? 60, sorry. Sorry, an extra 10 meters. Yep. So you could create like 4 groups, but you just work out before you get to that session what you would need to do. This is something that you would not do at the gym. This is something you literally do if you're training. Personally, I reckon like 5+ athletes.
Have you done this before?
Heaps of times. It works really good. What people suck at is
Stay within the 15 seconds?
yeah, but on that short one. So this short one here is the 70%, which is only a 35 meter run.
Slow down like a jog.
Nah, they get there too quick, I found.
Really?
So they've got 15 seconds to run 35 meters. That is literally like running like this. I can run 35 meters in 15 seconds if I run like that. But what people do is, once they do that 50 meter run, they run too fast and they get to the corner before the 15 seconds.
Right.
So what
and
you
are
got?
they allowed to pause, or do they have to keep running?
They have to stop. It's always on the 15. So it's really strict because the coach will blow the whistle. They run the straight line. 3, 2, reach the 50. Okay, slow recovery jog, 35 meters.
How many times would you run this with a group?
Cool, we'll go into that. So for grids, so the typical prescription, which is on the slide, is 15 on, so 15, 15, 8 to 10 reps.
8 to 10 Oh, sugar.
So 15 on, 15 off.
So like 8 to 10 minutes in total.
That takes about 4 or 5 minutes.
It's pretty quick.
Is it not a
15
minute?
seconds, do you think you're doing a grid?
So it would be a minute per each.
Grid. Maximum is about.
And how many times are you aiming to do
So,
the grid?
so if it takes a minute to do the grid, at least 4 rounds around the grid.
Right.
So 1 minute takes the whole, so it's 15, 15, 15, 15, at least 4 to 5 minutes.
Right.
That's a good starting point. And then you have a rest for, if that takes 4 minutes, you might want to rest for 4 minutes, 1-to-1 rest, work the rest.
Yeah.
And then you might ask them to do a second set,
Right.
4 rounds again. So it's 4 minutes of exercise, rest for 4 minutes, then go again. But then I've put in there as well, we can build their volume up to 6 to 8 minutes. So instead of them going around 4 times, they might go around it 8 times. Again, you build them up each. You might go to 3 to 4 sets, whatever it is. Without trying to confuse you too, Charles, what you can do as well. So you might, instead of, you know how we worked out 100%? And Dino as well. We could give them 105%. So we can actually increase that meters per second. That's 100% of their time. 3.33. But we can actually make it a little bit harder for them. So all you do is just go 3.33 times 1 point.
If you're doing 110%, it'd be 1.05.
Yeah. But let's say we're doing 5%.
So it'd be 1.05.
Yeah, 1.05.
3.33 times.
No, oh, is that divided or times? Yeah, 1 point. No, not 1.5 because that's 50%.
Oh my god. 3.33
Times 1.0.05 equals. Yep.
Alright.
So now your new 105% score is 3.49 meters per second.
Times 15.
Times 15 seconds equals. Great. So now we're getting them to run 52. 2 extra meters. Doesn't sound like much, but that's 5. Progressive overload, 5 to 10%, yeah?
Yep.
We don't want to increase on more than 10% in one given time. So all we're asking them to do is run 2 extra meters for each rep. So you could do that. It's a lot to take in, but it's important you sort of get exposed to it because you're going to have people. Yeah, for sure. I'm going to skip long intervals because, like, I don't want to. We're running out of time. But you can prescribe someone longer intervals using a mass score. Okay, there's a thing called. There's a thing called mass Eurofit. This is another heavily researched type of mass. This is where you give someone 120% of their mass score, 15 on, 15 off. So let's use that same example as before, 3.33, if we can, and let's get 20% on top of that score, and then times 1.2 equals.
3.9.
Okay, so that is 120% of your mass score. So now 3.9 times 15, great.
It's nearly basically
60 meters. Yep. So we would ask that person now to run at 120% for 15 seconds, 60 meters, followed by a 15-second rest. So Eurofit, grids is one method. Eurofit is the second type of method. Again, heavily researched, but you can see.
Working at a higher intensity.
Correct.
But you have a rest period.
You have a passive break. Correct. You have a passive break. Eurofit, very good, but again, we probably wouldn't start with Eurofit first day of training with someone. Yeah. Basic stuff. You can actually progress from 100. Have you done Eurofit too, Dino?
I've done a little bit, yeah.
Yep. So.
Mainly stuff I've done is grids.
Yep.
Or just like a set distance.
Yep. So that day, you remember that time when you were running with me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was actually Eurofit.
Yeah, I confuse the shit
Yep.
out of it because I can actually run mass better than I can run a 2 minutes.
Yeah. So that time you were with me, we were running. I was running above my mass. I was running at like 120%.
I was running at like 130.
You were maxed out. You had 200%.
You calculated it wrong?
Nah, so because I can't, like, aerobically, like, if I go run a 2K time trial, I'll get like 10 minutes.
You got compartment syndrome.
Like, I actually can't breathe because my nose is like fucked. Like, I literally don't have, I can't get enough oxygen in. So if I do like continuous running, I'll be shocking. But like in mass running, I could keep up him doing 120. But technically,
So one time Dean
140.
come to train with me doing this type of method where I was running at 120%. Dean kept up with me, like no training background, like he wasn't doing any running in the past months.
Yeah.
But if Dean was to do a big continuous long run for half an hour, he's saying he'd struggle. So
Wouldn't survive.
So 120% is a starting point, and then we can go to 125% and 130. We cap it at 130, typically, for Eurofit. Okay?
Then you just reassess and you get a new measurement anyway.
That's right.
You
That,
get data.
they've probably got a whole new MAS score anyway, and then you just get their 20% from there. So can you see the little diagram for Eurofit, Charles?
This,
Yep, that one there. So again, say you've got 6 groups.
yeah.
Everyone's got different scores. You can see group 1 runs the furthest and group 6 runs the shortest. Group 6 runs 68 meters in that 15-second time.
Right.
Okay, so you could go to a footy field, you could again create your 6 groups and then have your 6 distances, and you say, okay, athlete 1, you're group 1, you're group 2, you're group 3, you're group 4. Whistle's going in 3, 2, 1, run to the other side, make it in there by 15.
Did you count 15 out for them?
15 seconds. What do you mean?
You have a timer.
Oh yeah, you got a timer. You're just looking at your stopwatch on your phone. Or your watch, yeah. Yeah, you have to, or else they don't know if they've achieved. They might have made it there in 17 seconds. And you got to tell them to hurry up. Yeah. Okay, so the third method is MAS Tabata, which we sort of spoke about before. So Tabata method, now this is absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. It's 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. The 20 on is at 120% of their MAS, and then it's a 10-second rest.
So Eurofit's 20 seconds. I mean, 15 seconds, and Tabata's 20 seconds.
That's right. So that's the only difference. It's just the work to rest ratio. So instead of 15-15, it's now 20-10, and still the same percentage. This is really hard, okay? But again, depending on the person you're working with, like in sport, typically there might be times where you need to work, the athlete might need to do a 20-second effort, and then they might only have a 10-second break because the umpire's balling the ball up and they're having a 10-second rest, and then it's go again for 20 seconds. So it's a little bit more game-like, but it's a lot more high intensity. Again, start with lower reps. You might do 8 reps of that, and then you might go to 10, then to 12 reps. You might start at 1 set and then go to 2 sets. The third way to make it harder, and Dean, I don't know if you've tried this before, is it's point number 3. You can add a turn in there. Okay, so we said before 120% was 60 meters. True or not true? 60 meters, you calculated before? Yeah, it was 60 meters.
59.94.
We'll call it 60. Yeah, we just round it up if it's like that. So instead of getting the athlete to run 60 meters, if you wanted to make it harder, say the athlete's killing it, they're just you're giving them everything, but they're doing it too easy. You can set up a 30-meter cone, get them to run to the 30-meter cone, and then turn back and run to the start, which is 60 meters, right?
But is that agility?
Well, it's that turn they have to
Direction
decelerate,
change.
and then they have to.
Accelerate.
That takes so much energy out of someone than just running straight line.
Yeah.
It's like a car stopping, doing a U-turn, and then driving back that way. It takes extra time.
Yep.
So if you really want to challenge someone, you can instead of making one straight line, just shorten it in half and get them to turn. And that'll make it harder. But only if they're ready for that. Okay, we've spoken about watts. So really that's it for mass. They're the main methods. Grids, Eurofit, and Tabata. That is it. And long intervals you can do as well. I've put some really good resources at the end of this article, this PowerPoint, where if you want to do extra reading, highly recommend it. Okay, just wanted to talk to you guys about RPE training. Have you guys ever prescribed anyone aerobic training through RPE? Okay, cool. Talk to me about it.
Pretty much did it more with like cardiac population. More so because heart rate wasn't accurate
Yep.
for them, so it wasn't really going to tell me how hard they were working.
Yep.
So it was literally like setting, similar thing, but setting intervals, but then going like, I want you to be like at a 30 seconds for 17 out of 20, and then like 30 seconds at 11 out of 20.
Awesome.
So
Perfect.
simple as that.
So it's a little bit more subjective. You're not
Yeah.
going based on distances and
Yeah.
all that stuff. I reckon for clinical pop, well, there's pros and cons of RPE. It's a universal language, like it's easy for everyone to just look at. The cons are if the person might not actually be. You might say to them, work at a 4 out of 10, which is like a comfortable level, but they could be underdoing it or overdoing it. They might not have the understanding of actually, am I in the right zone?
Yep.
But for prescribing aerobic stuff, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've said to someone, go for a continuous run, like a 20-minute run, at not giving him a distance, not giving him a pace per kilometre to achieve. I'll just say, I want you to run at a 4 out of 10 RPE.
Similar to what we do with our X-Men groups and our Simply Stronger groups on the back when we're setting them intensity, right?
Yeah. But I'll say that's for the overall session, right?
I use it for aerobic.
Yeah.
That's mostly.
Oh, that
Like
thing on
when
the back?
Like, you know, they do their bike
That's cool.
or treadmill, whatever
Yep.
at the end. I say I want you to be between 12 and 16
Perfect.
on this chart.
Yeah, perfect. Yep, exactly right.
Yep.
So, there's nothing wrong with doing that with athletes as well, or just like general pop. So, if I was to prescribe you a 15-minute run this weekend, Charles, I might say to you, okay, 15 minutes at a 5 out of 10. This particular chart here is actually a little bit different to your standard RPE chart as well.
1 to 10.
It's sort of designed for people who run. So it just breaks it down and it helps. It's got a little bit more education on this one as well. So yeah, that's cool. Dean, I was just saying this RPE chart's a little bit
Gentle
more,
stroll through the woods.
it's a little bit more education on there. It's not just 1 to 10 with no words under it. So I would actually spend time with someone on an online check-in actually like describing what a 4 out of 10 is.
Dean wet himself.
So like a 5 would be a progressive pace feel. A pace that requires some pushing and effort to maintain, still able to hold a convo. A 6 would be hard, so laboured breathing, challenging and uncomfortable, but sustainable for 30 to 60 minutes.
So it's very specific.
I would literally educate someone on all of these 1 to 10, so I know they're in the right zone.
It's almost like something like a talk test.
Yeah, pretty much. Talk test is an even quicker way. All right, I know we're pushing time, so 1 sec. Heart rate zone. We've got 2 types of heart rate zones. Yeah, get some more into you. So, Chalo, what you did with us, low intensity, steady state, and high intensity. So, we can be even a little bit more specific and give heart rate zones for people and be like, you need to stay at 70 or 80% or 90 or whatever it is. Low intensity cardio is what is defined as 50 to 65% as your max heart rate, which is like what we've done. That's low intensity, 50 to 65%. High intensity is defined as 80 to 95% of your max heart rate. So, not appropriate for people that have medications that affect their heart or who don't have access to a watch and all that sort of stuff. But we can prescribe to heart rate zones. I haven't really done it too much with athletes at all. Low intensity, I tend to do it a bit. For high intensity, I don't really get them to focus too much on, like, you know how on the screen here you've got, you know, the MEPs and all that stuff. Like, yeah, I don't typically focus too much on it, but low intensity I do. I don't know why, it's just a personal thing, but I could though, but I just don't. Like, I wouldn't be like, yeah. Have you guys used heart rate training specifically with someone?
Not really. No one really that I've had has probably been appropriate.
Yep.
Probably do something with. Just don't want to tell them anything.
Yep.
It's more of them like the ones that I've done it with. It's been more just educating on RPE and then
Yeah.
making sure they got an understanding of that. And then that's actually been pretty consistent, accurate. Something as well, like that I tried with a few clients that didn't actually have like a bike that actually could measure their speed and all that.
Yep.
Was actually doing like a metronome.
Yep.
Doing it to like a metronome beat. So
Yep.
where they've got to pedal at that speed.
Yep.
And then so just doing it that way.
Yeah.
So where they've got to like a consistent speed they're pedaling at. So they actually got like a reference point.
Done that too before. Yep. Yep. Definitely a place for heart rate zone training though, as well. But you just got to know it's just a tool in the toolbox. We know cancer research and all these different types of research. You hear all this stuff come out on ABC, like how high intensity training is the new fashion, right? So some clients might, if appropriate, and you know they've got a bit of an exercise background, they might be suitable for that. They might be time poor. They might already have a good level of baseline fitness. They might not want to do lists because they don't have 60 minutes to walk outside.
But HIIT training kind of looks different for them versus some other people as well. Like
I don't really get you doing marching and doing that. It's like HIIT training, and that was like tiring for him.
Do you reckon he would have fallen in the 80 to 95% heart rate zone?
Yeah, but it wasn't necessarily heart rate because it wasn't accurate for him. But RPE wise, it was like telling me I was like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, gotcha.
So,
Yep.
like something like that was.
And but see, that's interesting, right? But let's say you looked at his 8 or like it was 8 or 9, but then you looked at his heart rate and it was only like he was only at 65%. That's the issue with RPE, right? Is that someone could, we know his heart can work a lot harder, but he might subjectively be saying, I'm at the max.
Yeah. It's
Yeah. So if you're ever curious about if a client's, they say I'm at the limiter, you chuck their heart rate on the treadmill while they're doing the test, and you like, fuck, your heart rate's 110. You know, maybe their subjective view of what they're perceiving isn't matching with what they're physiologically capable of doing.
Yeah.
So that's where the pros and cons come to it. I've put some progressions. So what I would start with, fartlek for 2 weeks, long intervals for 2 weeks, then grids for 2 weeks, then to Eurofit for 2 weeks, and then to Tabata for 2 weeks. So if I was assigned a 12-week pre-season gig with a team, that would almost be the methods I would use when I would work with them.
Right.
So I wouldn't just start at Tabata as week 1. I would start in this sort of fashion. This
Yep.
is just a basic skeleton. I'll do other stuff as well, but that's what you
Find that
could use.
Works well.
That's right. So if you've got an athlete that comes to you in October this year who's like 16 years old and really wants to be on top of his footy, you might want to follow something like that with them. Yeah. Let's experiment. Let's not. I put some bike. This is from the Melbourne Rebels. They use all these different what bike games and tests and things like that. And that's it, guys. I've got some resources. I would love to, at some stage in the next couple of weeks, I think it'd be nice either, if anyone's willing to, that's always nice. But I can also give you some case studies of people I've worked with. But again, if you haven't done it yourself, don't prescribe it. So if you don't prescribe Eurofit if you've never done it. Got to try it. Got to try Tabata. Got to try it all before you give it to someone.
Tabata's still awesome.
Tabata, yeah. That's it, guys. Questions? Anything? That's part 1. That's just a little bit more MAS. There's a lot to take in. It will involve rereading some stuff.
Yeah. That's fine. That's good.
I'm gonna do a lot like 2 kilometre and try these.
Yeah, definitely like the MAS stuff. Like, I did one to train my mate for footy, and I did it just as a side.
Yep.
Just because I thought, stuff it, I'll just do it with him.
Yep.
I literally shaved like my 100-meter run that I was doing. I shaved off about 8 seconds.
Yeah.
Like I went from about 22 to about 13, 14 seconds.
Yep.
Running that. So
Made a difference.
made a big difference.
In saying that though, guys, MAS, I don't want you to think of it as the be-all, end-all as well.
No, it's a good way to